Well, bailouts may buy time and friends on Wall Street, but they don't buy votes from Main Street because folks on Main Street are worried that if we don't get our debt together, when do we get to where Greece is right now? Who's going to bail out the folks giving the bailouts? Joining us now is the ranking member of the Senate Budget Committee, Senator Judd Gregg from New Hampshire. By the way, he voted for the bailout, and he is not running again this fall, so he's free to say whatever he wants. Good to see you again, Senator.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
How close are we to where Greece is now?
Well, we're on a path which will go to where Greece is. There's no question about that if we don't adjust our present financial house. If we continue to spend much more than we take in, we'll double our debt. That's projected. We'll double our debt in 5 years and triple it in 10 years. And we'll essentially be where Greece is in about 7 years. So we know we're headed in that direction unless we do something about reducing the level of our debt and reducing the level of our spending.
Now, Greece tried to hide the truth for a long time. They did a lot of finagling and fancy accounting, and they apparently got away with it for a while, but eventually the truth caught up. Now, we do some of that fancy accounting, too. I know we have a lot of unfunded liabilities that don't show up in our debt projections, et cetera. When and how does reality slap us in the face?
Well, when people stop buying our bonds, basically, when they tell us that they don't have any confidence in our debt being repaid, and they force us to pay a much higher interest rate, something that's unsustainable. And they essentially say to those of us, the United States, just trying to sell debt in order to finance our day-to-day operations of government, we don't believe you can repay that debt or can repay it in a way that makes us want to buy your debt at a reasonable price.
So when do you think that'll happen? When do people actually balk at buying our debt?
Well, that's hard to say, but there's some pretty significant warning signs that we've already seen. For example, Moody's has said they may downgrade us. They've said they're going to put us in a special class with the UK. China has said that they're very concerned about where we're going with our debt and the burden of our spending and our excessive deficits. And most interestingly, just 4 weeks ago, Warren Buffett issued debt that went out at a lower rate of interest than the U.S. Treasury did. That's a staggering event because it means people have more confidence that he'll pay them back, than that the United States government will pay them back. So the warning signs are already there. I guess if we're on this course and we continue on this course, we're looking at maybe at the outside 10 years.
10 years.
I think probably closer to 7 years before we hit the wall, so to say.
You know, taxpayers and voters in general, the general public in America have good common sense, great common sense, and they understand that what is being done now is unsustainable. That's one reason why, rather than being in favor of bailouts, whether their bailouts are here or even if they're abroad, because some of our money through the IMF is going to the Greek bailout, they say, forget about it. We want to fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. We don't want to believe these governments anymore. Why should the American people believe us when we say that we need a bailout to help us in the next financial crisis?
Well, actually, they shouldn't, and we're going to be passing a bill here fairly soon which won't allow any bailouts of banks that are too big to fail. They're going to be allowed to fail. That's one of the good things about the financial reform bill that's passing through the Senate here. But the bigger issue, quite honestly, is when do we, the American people, step up and acknowledge the fact that we're simply demanding too much services, more services than we can pay for. We have a fundamental problem here. We've got a retired population that's going to double in the next 5 years. We're going to go from 35 million retired people to 70 million retired people. We have promised that retired population a huge amount of benefits, much more than we can afford to pay as a society without either dramatically increasing our tax burden on working Americans, the younger Americans, and reducing their lifestyle, or inflating the economy and reducing the lifestyle of younger Americans. We've got to step up and face the fact that we've got an entitlement tsunami hitting us, and that we're going to have to step forward and make some tough decisions on how we control the rate of growth of entitlements. And not only are we not doing it, but we're aggravating the problem. The health care bill that passed the Senate, passed the House, signed by the President, added a brand new major entitlement, which we know we won't be able to afford, and took over $1 trillion of savings in Medicare, which should have been used to make Medicare more solvent, and spend it on that new entitlement, and just compounded our problems in the out years for our nation.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned tough decisions, and Beltway politics don't often go together, so we'll wait and see when that happens. But finally, I just got to ask you about Senator Bennett losing out in that primary in Utah. Of course, he, like you, was in favor of the bailout, stood by his decision. Do you think that politicians who were in favor of the bailout are going to be taken to task for it at the polls?
Well, my view is that we did the right thing, and actually we're getting the money back that we spent on TARP with interest, and we stabilized the financial industry, and as a result we didn't go into what was probably going to be a depression, and we didn't see a total implosion of our financial structure as a nation. No, we do know. I mean, if we'd allowed the financial structure to melt down, it would have been a horrific event.
The problem is, I mean, clearly there would have been a much bigger price to pay in the financial calamity, no doubt. Some big institutions like Citi and others would have gone down, but the voters still don't buy that.
No, they don't. It's hard to explain. The way I describe it is, if you're driving over a bridge and the bridge is about to collapse, and somebody comes along and fixes the bridge, and you drive over it and it doesn't collapse, you don't even know that somebody fixed it. Well, that's essentially what happened. And now we are getting the money back from TARP with interest. We're going to make money. Taxpayers going to make about $20 billion on TARP. That's a pretty good deal.
Well, hopefully, so if the government, but the administration is still spending money from TARP on all kinds of different programs, including housing programs, small business loans, et cetera. So they keep using the money coming back as a slush fund.
Well, under the law, they're supposed to use it to reduce the debt and the deficit. I put that language in myself, and hopefully they won't do that. And we're trying to do everything to keep them from doing that. And TARP should be ended as of now because we don't need it anymore.